So here I'm leaving that base wrap on and just kind of sneaking out his toes. That way he still feels nice and secure on the top half. I'm just trying to get his toes kind of close together. You can use that bottom wrap to hold his legs in place. I have no idea what I'm talking about there. Once again, I'm sure it's important. I'm just sticking that bean underneath him to kind of keep him more secure there, but to also get his feet up and in position more for the light. You can use whatever you want to wrap around their toes. I just have this like layer here that's a felted layer that I poked a hole in the middle of it. Poked a hole in the middle of it and stick their toes through it and then kind of swirl it around. I usually recommend that you don't use pink because I have heard that pink makes it look like toes are sticking out of lady parts. So just throwing that out there. I use tan or not even tan. I use white or something that's very obviously not lady parts. So it's one of those things I think once you see it, you can't unsee it. So I just have the little toes sticking out there. I swirl it around the toes so that it's all about drawing attention to their toes. A lot of it's about composition, and you want to, that's probably where I'm talking about the lady parts. It's about composition. You always want to draw attention to the thing that you're photographing. So this, in this instance, it's the toes. So that's why I have the blanket swirled around instead of just having it thrown around in an awkward position. Otherwise, you get more distracted by everything around the toes instead of the toes. Then I'm just bringing the light in so that it's nice and pretty and backlit. And I'm shooting from behind here. You can shoot on straight on, you can have your light straight on, but I prefer a backlit photo because it's just more creamy. Looks more dreamy, and I feel like all of the macro pictures should be kind of be that way. Sucked his toes back in. So I'm just looking at the toes and making sure they're all in line. If you shoot that way, and you're just going to get the first toe in focus. If you shoot this way, you're just going to get the baby toe in focus. So you want to make sure that you're straight on with those toes so that they're all in the same depth of field and you're getting all of them in the same plane, and then you can get all of them in focus. I also like to get those toes as close together as I can for kind of a straight on picture. And then I just get straight on so that all the toes are in the same plane so that hopefully they're all focused. In focus. Yada yada yada. I don't know what I'm saying. Maybe I should have just scrapped all of this, but I don't know. I thought we shot it for this workshop. I didn't want to toss it just because the audio didn't record. So, more is more in this instance. So I'm going to go from this pose into them wrapped on their back. So I'm leaving him, I'm going to be basically taking him out of that wrap and putting him kind of into another wrap that's more natural lit pose. Not naturally lit, naturally posed pose, with a more, it seems like kind of a natural dreamy light. So and you can leave him wrapped and do photos on that. That's probably what I was talking about. You can leave him wrapped and do photos of him wrapped on this backdrop because it's an option too. Especially if you have a baby that doesn't want to be unwrapped, you can leave them in that wrap and still pose them. There's a couple different ways you can light these. You can light them from the same position we've been shooting at, like with me sitting there in my chair and the light off to the side. You can light them that way just for the regular lighting, but I prefer to light them backlit for something different. I feel like we have, plenty of those lit that way. And by shooting them backlit, it just adds to the gallery and they're just so much prettier. I'm keeping him nice and wrapped up on the top as I sneak his diaper off. And it's just going to swirl around him. So I'm going to, with girls, you can kind of wrap it around them and have it flow off in the background. And it's really pretty with girls, but with boys, I tend to not do that. And it's basically just being wrapped around like that in a circle for boys. Girls, I kind of flow it off in the background. But with him, I guess I'm going to show you how to do it. So with girls, I just take it there, I tie it in a knot. Tie it in another knot. And then you make sure that that knot is between their elbow and their knee, so it's kind of hidden, and make sure that there's no fingers in there that are getting tied up, fingers or toes. I'm shooting from that direction, so I want it to flow off in the background of the baby. If it was pointing straight at me, it would be distracting. It would take the focus off of the baby. So the baby's there. I'm positioned, taking the picture on this side with the backdrop fabric, or with the wrap fabric flowing off in the distance. You don't really want it in the foreground, otherwise it's distracting. But for boys, I don't do that. I just wrap it around, kind of just in a circle, just wrap and wrap and wrap all the way around. I like the jersey wraps for this because they're really stretchy. You can use other wraps, they're just not as easy to work with. I like these because they're super stretchy. And when you take off this wrap, you just want to make sure you're keeping their arms nice and snug so they don't fly them out to the sides. Because once you pose them on their back, they tend to wake up a little bit easier, and you don't want to wake them up. Because these are my favorite pictures. I do them at the end because I find that's what works best, but I'm always kind of sad if a day don't work out because they're my favorites. Are you guys tired of hearing my voice yet? All right, so I'm just trying to get his hands in position there to kind of hold them where they need to go. And I'm bringing that side, kind of tucking his feet where they need to go to. Bringing that side down and around and up. and tucking it underneath that shoulder. It's all about trying to get it nice and snug. You don't have to really worry too much about his hands or his legs yet. You just want them curled up. And you don't really have to worry about the back of him because that's not going to show. So you just want to try to get it wrapped nice and snugly, and then we'll worry about his hands and fingers once we get him all wrapped. And then just pulling that nice and snug around the bottom, using my belly to hold his legs in place. And sneaking it back down around. And the trick is you got to keep it over his shoulders. Otherwise, it's just going to fall down behind his back. If you don't have the tension on the shoulders there, then you're going to lose the whole wrap back behind him. And you can pull that up over his head if you want for more of an egg wrap and just have his head showing. And you just curl him towards the light, but I tend to just have their head out. And then I'm just kind of pulling that back a little bit, trying to peel back the layers. And then you're going to have to curl him up on that beanbag. So I'm finding that moonrise bean again, and I'm putting the bigger bean up towards his head. And the bottom bean, this is where I'm talking about how you can light it two different ways. So you can light it that way with him curled up on his back there, or you can switch it this way and shoot from that direction and have it backlit. And I just prefer that look a little bit better for something different. So I'm putting it on there that way, so his head will go on that bigger bean, and then he'll curl up and his feet will kind of be more on that smaller bean and curled up. It's the same way with that huck fin. It's the exact same position as the huck fin. You just don't have a wrap. So as you're positioning him, you don't want him flaying down flat like that. You need him curled up and basically have his head kind of curled up toward his toes. And I'm not forcing him into that position. I'm just kind of curling him up and letting him go that direction. I'm not forcing him into it. And you can see all that mess down by on his bottom, but none of that matters because it's not going to show. I'm just bringing that bean out more so that his butt sinks down in more. I'm just pulling my backdrop nice and tight. So the trick to this is you have to bring the light in and it's going to seem uplit, which seems completely counterintuitive to what I've been teaching you. It seems backwards. You're going to feel like it's uplighting him because his feet are going to be in that direction, but just ignore the bottom half. Ignore his feet and pay attention to his face. You want the light to come down and across his face, which his feet just happen to be up there. So just ignore the fact that it seems uplit. I'm just trying to get his face curled up even more towards his feet. And you don't want his chin tucked straight down for that positional asphyxiation. So you don't ever want to pose them with their chin straight down touching their chest. So again, for this, you want to tilt their head kind of to the side, just like that, and then it keeps their airway open too, instead of having it tucked straight down. That part's not going to show. And you're taking the picture this direction, like down his face. So you're not going to see that part. And here I'm just going to peel back that layer to see more of his legs and arms. I'm trying to cross his legs so that that heel is right at the ankle of the other foot. And they kind of just fit together naturally into the little V that way. And I'm using my other arm to kind of hold his head in position while I'm doing this. That's why I like doing this with the wrap. I feel like you can just, I don't know, use the wrap to your advantage to hold them in that position, because it's pretty much the same thing as the Huck Finn pose. Um, it's just with a wrap, and I like it with the wrap because it helps hold them in position better. And it's not like you're covering up anything you wouldn't see otherwise. I feel like it's just making it easier on yourself. So there's a couple options you can do here. A lot of times I will just kind of go with where their hands lay and see what works for them. I like to have them tucked up underneath that chin and use their head to kind of hold it in position. You can bring that other hand, his left hand, up on his face and kind of have it up on his face. You can bring that left hand down and around on like his bottom, which is technically the Huck Finn, with that arm down and around the outside. And you want that light coming across his face. It seems backwards because it's hitting his feet, but you want it coming across his face. So I'm taking my aperture back down because I was shooting his macros before. So I know that I have to take my aperture back down, switch my lens back, and turn my light back down if I bumped it up. So make sure you do that. Make sure you turn your light down. Otherwise, you're going to take all these pictures. And they're going to, sorry, I'm yawning. And they're going to be overexposed. You don't want them to be overexposed. So make sure you put your light back down. Put your aperture back down. I like these nice and dreamy, so you can shoot on a Nikon. You can get away with shooting down close to, and you can shoot 1.4, 1.6 if your gear will allow you to do that. With a Canon, I tend to shoot these closer to 2.5, just because there's a difference in the lenses in the camera bodies, and I feel like Nikon focuses a little bit better, and you can get away with 1.4, 1.6 a little bit better. So again, I'm clear up at his head, shooting down his face. I like to move in and get a nice close-up of his face too, because it's just really sweet with his little hands on his face, and parents love those up-close pictures. It's also nice, you can kind of take this and move that, that's what I'm talking about, you can move that arm down around underneath him or up on his face. You can let him hold his feet, you can kind of work with what the baby wants to do, and you can kind of do more like baby-led posing if you want to. Here I'm just going to try to take his little arm down onto that leg. And that's like the true Huck Finn pose, where you get that hand on that leg. And it will stay if you pose them correctly without a wrap, but I don't know, why make it hard on yourself? I just use a wrap. It's just easier. Keep those fingers nice and straight underneath his face. And that angle looks terrible. It's just the angle. It looks so much better from his head. And up at his head, shooting down. I'm just watching my light, trying to get it angled a little bit better and coming across his face instead of, it was kind of uplighting him just a little bit there. You can see the shadow fall off right there on his cheek. So you see the darker shadow on that cheek, and then the light's coming right across his face, and you can see where it gets darker. I know know I talk about the light a lot, but it really does matter. It's one of the biggest components of the picture. You can pose a baby perfectly all day long, but if your light is wrong, it's going to mess up your whole photo. So this is where you can do fun, natural posing. You can let them take a little wrap and lay it over the top of them, have them peeking out of it. You can let them kick their arms up to the side, up behind their head. You can kind of do all those monkey positions it looks like I'm doing there. And just kind of make it more natural. And I do a lot of these in my natural newborn sessions where I kind of just let their arms go where they go and see what they do and take pictures along the way because it's so sweet and parents love it. And it's a nice contrast to the superposed pictures, which we do a lot. It gives them just something different for their gallery. And it is baby led, but you still have to use your posing pillows to get them in the perfect position. I'm still, even though he went in that position, I'm still trying to keep his hands or his arms kind of curled up so that it's not awkward. Because it's kind of, with natural posing, it's kind of a balance of them doing what they want to do and then you perfecting it and making it look more comfortable. So this is where I'm talking about. You could either shoot from the direction I'm at, which is backlit, or you could come from the other side and shoot down. It's kind of cute how he ended up there. But he rotated. So I got to get his head tilted back up. Otherwise you just see all that side of his face and you want the light to come across his face the right way. And I'm clear up above him, shooting down. This is where you can come another direction and shoot the other way. I'm just kind of walking around. Sometimes it's hard to get, he's in the middle of that beanbag, and sometimes it's hard to get quite the angle that you want. You gotta keep the junk covered up. And he looks super uncomfortable from this angle, but once you get above him and shoot down, it looks completely different. Just whacked my head on the thing sticking out. I just talked about it. And I did it. So just twisting his head a little bit. Sometimes those little tweaks make all the difference. So I'm just trying to get another pillow under there to hold his head in position a little bit more. And I had that hand up, but he ended up putting it back down there. And it actually ended up being one of my favorite pictures from his session because it just looks comfy and curled up and natural. And again, I'm clear up behind him, shooting down. And I ended up adding some negative space when I edited it. Just to have a more impactful photo. He's looking at me. And I'm just tickling his cheek. Sometimes when they're opening their eyes like that, if you just rub their cheek, sometimes you get a smile out of them. So that gives you an idea of what you can do. Kind of just some of that baby led unwrap closing. You can gradually unwrap them even more and do completely naked if you wanted. That's the nice thing about everything I'm teaching you is that yes, I have a specific workflow, but you can add to it or you can take away from it based on what works for you and what you like. You know, if you don't like the potato sack, don't do it. If you don't like the froggy pose and that's not something you don't want to do, then don't do it, don't offer it, and don't post it. If you post it, people will expect it, so just don't post it. But I love these pretty simple neutral backlit pictures. So it kind of gives you an idea of how you can do that and incorporate that. And we would have had to, but you'll be glad you did. Mom will be glad you did. And it's always a good way to practice. So.